El Día de los Muertos se traduce como the Day of the Dead. Y el Día de los Muertos es un festival donde it is a festival where se recuerda a los seres queridos muertos. So in Spanish, the key verb in here is recordar, which means to remember, recordar. But if you want to say I remember, you would say recuerdo. He or she remembers, recuerda. And then we've got this, which is called the impersonal se. So the impersonal se means different things. So it can mean we remember, it can mean he, she remembers, it could be they remember, or we remember. So it is a way of just saying, in a nutshell, people. So this is what we call the impersonal se, it's like the passive voice. So people remember loved ones who have passed away. So that's the literal translation. So the Day of the Dead is a festival where people remember those or loved ones that have passed away. En general se celebra en España y también en muchos países en Latinoamérica. So it is celebrated in Spain and also in many Latin American countries. El país más popular es México. The most popular one is Mexico. El contexto, so we've got a bit of context. El contexto es similar, so the context is quite similar. En España, el contexto es la influencia de la Iglesia Católica. Is the influence of the Catholic Church. Mientras que en México tenemos dos. Tenemos la civilización azteca, the Aztec civilization, and also after 1492 with colonization, con la colonización, especialmente en el siglo XVI, la religión católica. Es decir, que en España el contexto es muy religioso, muy religioso, it's a very religious context, mientras que en México hay elementos religiosos, there are religious elements, because in 1492 Columbus discovered America, and throughout the 16th century they brought the Catholic religion into the Americas. However, before Columbus arrived in 1492, America was ruled, or was what the people in charge, or the people who lived in that, were three big civilizations that were the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Inca Empire. So the Mayans were on the area of Mexico as well. The Aztecs went through like Mexico, Mayans like moved into Central America, and then the Incan Empire focused on the south of America, South America. So in countries like Peru. So the Aztecs, one of the key things of the Aztecs, one of the key things they believed in, is that they were polytheistas. Polytheistas comes from the Greek word polis, which means a lot, and theos, which means God. So the Aztecs believed in a lot of gods. So when we think of the Day of the Dead in Mexico, we need to think of this civilization as having a big input into the way that people in Mexico see death. So whereas in Spain, death is seen as something, and we'll come back to that in a minute, la muerte como algo serio, triste y que se debe respetar. So whereas death is seen as something serious, sad, and that has to be respected, or that, remember the impersonal se, people have to respect. So it's not about the schools, it's not about like dressing up, because it's something serious because of the influence of the Catholic Church and something to be respected. In Mexico, because of the influence of the Aztecs in particular, so they combine these days both elements, la muerte es vista, so death is seen como algo normal. So it's seen as something normal que es parte de la vida. So it's seen as something normal that is part of life. So it is otra etapa, another stage of life. So instead of, because of the influence of that, they believe in like life afterwards, and then they thought, well, it's just another stage. So you pass away and it has to be celebrated as something happy. It doesn't have to be everything like so dark, dramatic, and with tears. It has to be like as something like as a big celebration to commemorate dead people. So what things do they have in common? Las cosas que tenemos en común principalmente es que es un festival donde se recuerda a los seres queridos muertos y las personas visitan los cementerios. So people visit the cemeteries y llevan flores. And they take flowers. También los dos, en España y México, se celebra, el festival se celebra, it is celebrated en noviembre y novembre con la familia, with family. Y se comen platos típicos, so you eat typical dishes, y productos and products del mercado local, from the local market. Obviously, depending on which region and in which country you're celebrating it, the typical dishes are going to be different. So we're going to be looking at all of the differences. Entonces, ¿cuál es la diferencia? The difference goes in 4 different categories. En primer lugar, tenemos los colores. Tenemos también la fecha. So even though they are both celebrating mainly in November, the dates vary. También el ambiente, which is the mood or the vibe. Y por último, tenemos los símbolos, some symbols, y la comida, and the food, which is different. Entonces, en primer lugar, en España, los colores principales están aquí. So the main colors, you can see them on the nails. Tenemos el naranja, orange, blanco, white, marrón, brown, negro, black, y verde, green. Repito, naranja, blanco, marrón, negro y verde. En México, sin embargo, los colores son más variados. ¿Vale? Tenemos muchos colores. Tenemos el negro, black, amarillo, yellow, rojo, red, rosa, pink, verde, green, blanco, white, naranja, orange, azul, blue, azul, marrón, brown y morado. Con respecto a la fecha, en México, el Día de los Muertos no es un día, es una semana y lasts for a whole week, una semana, que es between el 27 de octubre, between the 27th of October, y el 2 de noviembre. And the 2nd of November. Entonces, empieza, it starts, on the 27th of October, y termina, it finishes, on the 2nd of November. Because on each day, what you are celebrating is different reasons for people who have passed away. So, for example, one of the day, you commemorate the death of people who died, for example, in a car crash. Another day, you would commemorate the death of people who died on a violent type of death, for example, people that had been killed. And then on the 31st, we celebrate, or they celebrate, se llama el Día de los Angelitos, the Day of the Little Angels, who is the day of children who have passed away at very young age. So they celebrate it on different days. En España, solo se celebra un día. It only takes place for a day, which is on the 2nd of November, el 2 de noviembre. Sin embargo, en España, hoy en día, lo que hacemos es, hoy en día, es que el 31 de octubre, debido a la influencia anglosajona, due to the Anglo-Saxon influence, celebramos Halloween. So we celebrate Halloween. Y los niños se disfrazan, so children get dressed up. Los niños piden caramelos. They go and knock on the doors and do trick or treat because of the influence of American culture, Anglo-Saxon culture. Luego, el día 1 de noviembre, celebramos el Día de Todos los Santos. So we celebrate All Saints' Day. And on this day, what we do is that we eat lots of typical products. Por ejemplo, frutos secos, which are nuts. También comemos, por ejemplo, boniato, which is sweet potato. Y también comemos, por ejemplo, mazapán, que lo llamamos huesos de santo. So they are called saints, huesos de santo. They are called saints' persons' bones. And obviously you're not eating saints' persons' bones. What you're eating is just marzipan. So what we do is that we bake some marzipan. We shape it with the shape of like a finger. And then it's just marzipan in the oven. But with like a nice shape and like a nice flavor. Marzipan tastes a little bit like almond. So if you ever had almond extract, this is what it tastes like. Entonces, el día 2 de noviembre es cuando celebramos el Día de los Muertos. That is the actual day when people go to the cemetery, put flowers to people who have passed away. And whereas in Mexico, just if you think of the colors, in Spain, everything is triste, sad, serio, serious, tranquilo, quiet, cómodo, comfortable. So if you think of the colors, you think of orange, white, brown, green, black. So everything is like quite sad and serious because of the influence of the Catholic Church. But also it's your time to come on the 1st of November with your family, bake some typical dishes, eat some stuff like sweet potato, like for the afternoon. So you usually have it after lunch at about 5 p.m. because we don't eat dinner in Spain until 9. So whereas everything is like quite comfy as well, relajado, relaxing, relajado. People go and gather in one person's house, you watch a movie, you cozy up, you have your like chai latte or your like type of hot chocolate with the fireplace if it's too cold. And emotive or emotional. So it's everything is sort of like, relaxing, cozy and stuff. In Mexico, it's a day that is to celebrate because death is seen as something happy. So if you think of all of that yellow, red, pink, green, the vibe, the mood, so el ambiente, the mood in Mexico es feliz, happy, animado, lively, divertido, fun, vibrante, vibrant, vivo, bright. So everything is full of colors, full of skeletons. So there is lots of ofrendas. Una ofrenda, it's an offering. So what people do is they build some altares. So they make some altars where they put flores. Okay, so they put flowers. Y ponen también la comida favorita, the favorite food of the dead person, of the person that passed away. Uno de los ejemplos de productos típicos o platos típicos es el pan de muerto, which literally means dead person's bread. So it is a type of bread that is sweet and it tastes like really nice, like a sweet bread. They also make calaveras de azúcar, so sugar skulls. They make lots of like sugar skulls as well, just for decoration. And they make these altars in the house, but also when they go to, in Mexico, to the cemetery. We've said that people bring flowers and they visit the cemetery. One thing we need to bear in mind is that because in Spain, everything is seen as something sad and serious to respect. In Spain, when you go to a cemetery, most cemeteries, not like the super old ones, most cemeteries look actually like this. And they are like big, sort of like a tall like platform where each person is buried on one of these little holes. So the coffin goes in there, and depending on when you pass away, so as you are like born or when you get your plan, you would rent one of these, so you need to pay like a rent. So you don't get buried on the ground like the traditional thing that we think on England of like, you know, the tombstone and stuff like that, because in Spain there is no space, there is no land to put people on the floor. So what we need to do is we need to bury them in these sort of structures, but bigger ones. So in each of these you put a coffin in, and then if you look at it from the side, you would see that the coffin goes in this way. So this is you looking at from the side. So you push the coffin in, so that's where the coffin goes, all the way to the back. Then they built a little white platform in here. So this is to stop anything coming in or out when whatever process happens in that takes place. So you just stop that or anything from coming out. Remember, in Spain it's very hot. So imagine that the process in Spain is a lot faster for the body. And then they leave a bit of empty space in here, gap of air, and then that's where you put your actual like marble in there, where it says the name of the person. So in Spain, what you see from the front is lots of like marble in here with the name of the person, the date of birth, the date when they passed away, and a little vase for you to put just one or two flowers. So you cannot really put a bunch of flowers in Spain. So when you go to Spain on the Day of the Dead, the main thing that takes place is that you can see lots of ladders, okay, because they are very, very tall, like triple the height of a person. And also depending on how much money you pay, that's where you get buried. So if you rent this bit, and then after certain years, it becomes what we call un nicho de propiedad. It becomes your property. After like you buy it for like 80 years, for example. So when my granddad passed away, he was the first person to pass away in my family, we rented that one with a system. So I know already where I'm going to be buried if I decided to get buried in Spain. So I know that when I pass away, because this is for my family and we have, we are paying for that, that's where I would be buried. So in Spain, you've got your ladder, you've got like little fountains, and then you go on the Day of the Dead, and the main thing is, what you do is limpiar, you clean the tombstone, you just polish it, and then you just put one flower, pones una flor. Mientras que en México, whereas in Mexico, even though they've got these at the moment, sorry, I just skipped to that. We'll go to Mexico in a second. So if you're buried at the bottom, that is a lot cheaper because you are at ground level. So if you want to pay the least amount of money, you will get buried at the bottom of it. So then by being buried at the bottom, the reason for that is if there is a flood, that quite likely the water might come in. Also, you don't want to be at the top because of the rain, because this is a flat roof. So if you are on top, the rain can cause damage. So the most sought for locations are the second, and sometimes you get like 5 or 6. So this as further to the top that you can, because then you will get your ladder and you go up and you clean it and you polish that. You can also put a sentence on your marble. And when a second person dies, so when my grandma died, we had my granddad's coffin. She passed away 10 years after my granddad. So what we did is, because she wanted to be buried with him, but she wanted to be cremated, so you can be enterrado, you could be buried, o puedes estar incinerado. Incinerado. That comes from the word ceniza, which means ashes. So you could be cremated. So what we do when the next person dies is, on that area where you've got nothing, that's where you could just put the ashes. So if you wanted to, you could just put them in there, the ashes. Or, like my grandma did, you could, because this is just a plasterboard, you can just knock it down, and then you can put this inside there, because you still got a bit of space. So we put my grandma's ashes in there, and then they rebuilt that plasterboard. And then a very interesting thing is that in Anglo-Saxon countries, on this marble, you would put the name of every person that is buried in there. Whereas in Spain, you only put the name of the last person who's buried in there. If someone dies within 7 or 8 years, which is by law what you need to leave, then what you can do is you can rent another one, you can rent it, and after those years, then you can put them together. But you need to wait for a certain amount of years. And finally, in Mexico, what they do is that they don't only clean the tombstones, but they also decorate it. They put some food, they do the ofrendas, they do the offerings near the tombstone, so they put lots of flowers, lots of candles around. And visiting a cemetery in the Day of the Dead in Mexico is something quite lively, and people and children dress up as well. And a very, very good video to watch is, if you want to watch a film, the film Coco by Disney is a very good one to watch. But the main thing is you can watch a little section where Mama Elena is explaining, where the grandma is explaining to the little boy why it's so important to do the offerings at home, to remember people. So this is the key idea of the Day of the Dead.